Ladies and gentlemen, let me commence by thanking Major Dalbir Singh for those very warm and affectionate words. I don't know whether I deserve those platitudes, but I would still like to thank him for being kind. When Major Saab sent the subject to me about media, social media, and Trump, I thought to myself, well, Donald Trump is a standalone subject. In the sense, he's got the entire world hooked onto his 6 a.m. tweets. So therefore, possibly, I guess, before 5:45 in the morning, even Donald Trump does not know as to how the next tweet is going to cause the next earthquake in which part of the world. So therefore, trying to make sense out of Donald Trump, I guess, is way beyond my pay grade, because I do believe that there are a large number of people all around the world, institutions with enormous amount of intellectual and intelligence capacity who are trying to make sense out of where the United States is headed. And I don't think in the last 1 month, ever since President Trump's inauguration, they've been able to make much headway. But Trump's election was a very, very interesting election. He defied every prediction, which wrote him off in both the primaries and then in the presidential race. There was nobody who was giving him a chance in hell. And finally, when the numbers came in, everybody, especially the mainstream media in the United States of America, had to eat crow. The fundamental question then is that, did mainstream media get it wrong? Or they were aware of what they were up against and were trying to run a concurrent campaign to support the Democratic Party nominee, Hillary Clinton. Because if you step back and look at what's really happened in the United States presidential sweepstakes, is something much, much more than the media or the social media. There is a fundamental debate which is possibly raging across the drawing rooms of the United States of what the national interest of the United States means. And Trump, once again, represents the victory of the Jacksonian line, what President Andrew Jackson had propounded, as opposed to the Wilsonians and various other people, that America's national interest lies in looking after American people first. And I think that's where the entire liberal establishment got it completely wrong. They possibly did not want to fathom. I'm not saying that they could not fathom. They did not want to fathom the reality that events as they've unfolded since 2001, the engagements in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the investment of treasure and human lives, had fundamentally made America question as to whether all this exertion was really worth it at the end of the day. There have been NATO skeptics in the United States for a very long time, people who've believed that it's time that Europe started paying for its own security, and the United States should not really be underwriting the NATO project. It may have been relevant in 1945 or in the early years after the Second World War. But it is no longer relevant now. So therefore, what you are seeing in the Trump phenomena is not so much about his ability to be able to get his message out. What you're seeing is his incisive grasp of how Americans have now started perceiving where does the fundamental national interest of that nation lie. And it's time that the world woke up to that reality, that the United States, being the largest outside balancer of power in various regions across the world, is redefining itself. And there is going to be cost and pain to many people once that redefinition really plays itself out. Coming back to the media, well, ultimately, I think all of us tend to ignore one reality, that the media is not a philanthropic exercise. The media is a business like any other business. It's got its bottom lines, it's got its shareholders, it's got its employees, and therefore there is a lot of the back end which really drives the front end of the media. Let me give you some numbers in the Indian context. In 1991, India had one television channel. Today, at the last count, we have about 850 television channels. There are about 170 million television homes in India who have access to cable and satellite television. Out of these 850 channels, there are about 400 news and current affairs channels. And the total share of news as a genre in the entire television universe is only 7%. 93% of Indians don't watch news. So you have 400 odd guys kicking around in 7% of the space trying to make money to survive. And so therefore, a lot of the sensationalism, a lot of the eyeballs grabbing exercise which goes on a daily basis is driven by a very fundamental revenue imperative. Because eyeballs means advertising money. There is no subscription revenue which comes in. And if you are not the dog eat cat kind of a channel, then you will shut shop. And so therefore, and these are realities which are, if you extrapolate it, plaguing almost every media landscape in every democratic country. In the United States, well, to some extent, Donald Trump may have succeeded despite the media. But the one thing which has to be appreciated about the US media is that there was a pushback on values. The establishment believed that the United States stands for certain fundamental values. They saw Donald Trump as the antithesis of those values. It's another matter that they were out of sync with what the rest of America was thinking, but they pushed back. And they pushed back real hard. Because at times, or invariably, democracy is not about listening to the voice of the majority. Democracy is also about giving the creative minority the values on which a nation state is constituted a fundamental chance to be out there in the public discourse. And yes, to some extent, social media has, or new media, has changed all that, because no longer is the discourse now top down. Me talking and you listening. there would be 20 people in the hall who would be simultaneously twittering that, well, I don't agree with what this idiot is saying. So therefore, there is a fundamental leveling of the playing field, which the new media has done. Because if you step back, the internet has been the most audacious experiment in anarchy. And it has succeeded. The internet represents the largest ungoverned space on planet Earth. Never before in the history of humankind has so much power resided concurrently on so many fingertips around the world. There's more data which is churned out every day than from the beginning of civilization till the turn of the 20th millennia. So the world that we inhabit today is actually at the intersection of two civilizations. A physical civilization that evolved, the brick and mortar civilization that evolved over all these centuries, and a virtual civilization which is still evolving as we speak. And the future of humankind actually lies at the intersection of these two civilizations. So therefore, what Trump and his campaign were very successful in doing was they harnessed the fact that there is a leveler which is available, and the leveler gives us the ability to be able to send out our message, irrespective of what the mainstream media is doing. But more importantly, there was somebody who was there to grasp that message. That understanding that, look, all these guys are out of sync, and therefore they're missing the wood for the trees. And if we are able to get our great new media machine and put the word out, there would be people willing to listen to it. So, and as things are going to unfold, one of the biggest challenges which the civilized world is going to face is about the evolution of rules of engagement in the virtual civilization or in the internet space. Just as we saw the rise of the internet during our lifetime over the last 2 decades, you may actually also see the demise of the internet, the balkanization of the internet, along hegemonistic domains, along value systems, along civilizational reach. So therefore, all those who are really advocates of the power of the new media in terms of its ability to be able to allow every last person to put the word out, actually have the largest stake in seeing that rules of engagement actually emerge in the virtual civilization. Because let's not forget, the hardware, if you look beyond the flora and the fauna of the internet, the hardware is still controlled by nation states. Licensing of gateways, routers, the whole physical infrastructure of the internet still lies in the control of Westphalian entities. And China possibly is the most successful example of actually turning the internet into an intranet. It's another matter that despite doing that, they're not able to stop 1 million mutinies which take place every day in the virtual space. But the fact is, there is a living live example of that firewalling having taken place. And so therefore, if you were to extrapolate the Chinese example to Donald Trump and the policies that he's pursuing in terms of new immigration regulations and stuff like that, well, he can tomorrow turn around and say that all the traffic, which let's say emanates from the 7 countries that he's identified, will not be allowed access into the United States. So therefore, you virtually then have an Anglo-Saxon internet and you've firewalled the Islamic net into a specified geographical region. So Donald Trump has implications, or his victory has implications far, far beyond possibly what is really in the realm of imagination. And therefore, I would be very interested in watching as to how the next couple of months unfold. If the establishment in the US is able to push back and get things to an equilibrium, well, then it'll be business as usual. But if President Donald Trump has his way, ladies and gentlemen, then we need to grab on to our seats. Thank you very much.